this ever-changing world in which we live in makes you give in a cry. Say, live and let die. Live and let die. Live and let die. Live and let die.
Teamwork is the word that best describes the 1996 Video Etc. Pirates. Excellent fielding, timely hitting, and a little luck are some of the ingredients of a winning softball team. And in 1996, the Video Etc. Pirates did a lot of winning. The season began on a cold night in early May versus Heritage House. With Video Etc. leading 4-3 after 4 innings, things were looking good. However, in the top of the 5th, the temperature got much colder when sloppy defense and some well-placed hits gave Heritage House a 7-4 lead. With 1 out in the bottom of the 5th, Kelly Martinez got a rally going with a single. Then, with 2 down, Paul Hagen finds a gap. This brings Dave Paul to the plate with 2 on and 2 out. Kelly and Paul both score, making it a 7-6 Heritage House lead. Through the 6th and 7th innings, Heritage House could only manage 1 more run, thanks to some solid defense. Dave Paul, George Hay, and this hustling backup play by Jim Savage. Trailing by 2 runs in the bottom of the 7th, it all came down to the last at bat. With 1 away, Jim Savage got things started. Then, Kelly Martinez, with her 2nd clutch hit of the game, put runners on 1st and 3rd. Then Kevin Gorin promptly cut the deficit to 1 with an RBI single. Paul Hagen loaded the bases with the 4th consecutive hit in the inning. Once again, this brought Dave Paul to the plate with the game on the line. Dave's hit drove in the tying and winning runs, giving Video Etc. its first and one of its most dramatic wins of the season. Game 2, Video Etc. versus the Galley Hatch. The game versus the Galley Hatch was a painful experience, in more ways than one. The Hatch scored 11 runs in the 1st inning, thanks mostly to shabby Video Etc. defense. Despite the large deficit, Video Etc. didn't quit. thanks to some serious offensive output of their own. Dan Paul went 4 for 4 with 2 RBIs and 3 runs scored. Beth Hawthorne had 2 hits. Kevin Gorin, Paul Hagen, and Dave Paul all had a multi-hit, multi-RBI game. The biggest show of the night, however, was put on by Jake Fowler. Jake clouded not just 1, not just 2, but 3 long home runs. Unfortunately, all 3 homers were solo jobs, coming as leadoff hits in 3 different innings. Despite putting up their biggest run total of the season, Video Etc. lost 19-13. There was one other loss, however, that potentially meant even more. Pitcher George Hay was on second base when Dan Paul drove a single to center. George, trying to score on the hit, gets caught in a rundown between third and home. When the play ended, George had a third-degree separation of his pitching shoulder. Losing the game was tough enough, but losing your number 1 pitcher and one of your best players was much worse. Video Etc. would meet the challenge. Left field was patrolled by Kevin Gorin. During the course of the season, there was very little that escaped his grasp. Here's just a few highlights. Kevin also had a standout year at the plate. If he wasn't driving in runs, he was scoring them. Kevin lived on base all season long. Kelly Martinez was another member of the outfield crew and did an excellent job in right center field. Kelly's biggest contribution, however, came at the plate. Starting rallies, scoring runs, or driving in teammates, Kelly did the job. Paul Hagen moved from left to right field, a move that greatly strengthened the overall outfield defense. Here's some examples of Paul's handiwork. As always, Paul had a fine year at the plate. If Video Etc. had a rally going, you can bet Paul was somewhere in the middle of it. Game 3 versus Timberland was played on another raw and rainy night. The action, however, was rather hot, as Bill Regan, filling in for the injured George Hay, led Video Etc. to its second victory, 9-5. Game 4 versus Fun was a memorable back and forth contest. Video Etc. quickly got on the board in the top of the first when Kevin Gorin lashed a 1-out single. Dave Paul followed with another, putting Video Etc. in business with runners at first and third. Jake Fowler drove in the first run on a fielder's choice, and Video Etc. grabbed a 1-0 lead. In the bottom of the first, the lead suddenly evaporated as Fun came out swinging. The big blow came on this lined shot to left, just out of Kevin Gorin's reach, scoring 2 of the 4 runs Fun plated in the first inning. In the second inning, both teams would score 1 more run. With 2 out, Paul Hagen got things going with a double. Then, Jim Savage smacked a single through the hole. Paul catches the Fun outfielders napping, and when the throw came into second, Paul scampered home. In the bottom of the second, Dave Paul put on a fielding clinic. In the top of the third, trailing 5-2, Video Etc. came out smoking. Deb Noble led off with a single. Kevin Gorin singled. Then Dave Paul drops one into right field, loading the bases for Jake Fowler. Jake's grand slam vaulted Video Etc. into the lead 6-5. Over the next 2 innings, good defense would hold Fun scoreless. Becky LaMontagne. In the top of the fourth, Video Etc. would extend the lead to 7-5 on this sacrifice fly by Kevin Gorin. In the bottom of the fifth, with 2 out, Fun would close the gap to a single run with this RBI double. Through the 5th and 6th innings, Video Etc. had runners on base, but could not score. In the bottom of the 6th, Fun struck back. With the bases loaded and 1 out, this single to center would plate the tying and go-ahead runs, making it an 8-7 Fun lead. Video Etc. would have one last chance in the top of the 7th. Kevin Gorin became the tying run with a leadoff single. Unfortunately, Kevin was left stranded as the next 3 batters would all fly out to end the game. It was a tough loss, but Video Etc. was about to begin a streak that would propel them to the top of the league. Game 5 versus Foss was the battle in the fog. Video Etc. saw its way clear to a dramatic 11-10 victory, the biggest play of the game being a clutch 2-out hit by Becky LaMontagne that sent the game to extra innings. Game 6 versus the Electric Wave was no contest, literally. Video Etc. chalked up another victory when the Wave could not field the team and had to forfeit. Game 7 versus the Seacoast Lawmen loomed as a very big game for Video Etc. The Lawmen came in tied for first with a 5-0 record, while Video Etc. was at 4-2, needing to win to get back into the fight for first place. In the bottom of the second, with the score tied at 2, Video Etc. would grab the lead. It started with a single by Dan Paul and another by George Hay. Barbara Stickney would reach on an error, loading the bases for Amy Dolliver. Amy's chopper would force Dan at the plate on a very close play, bringing up Dave Paul. Dave's shot up the middle would be knocked down to force out Amy, but George would score, putting Video Etc. into the lead. Then with 2 out, Deb Noble would deliver a clutch single, making the score 4-2 Video Etc. The lead didn't last long, however. In the top of the third, with 1 out, an error by Dan Paul opened the door for the Lawmen. This 2-out homer tied the score at 4, forcing another comeback by Video Etc. In the bottom of the third, Kevin Gorin got the comeback rolling with an infield single. Then, Jake Fowler laced a double to left, putting runners at second and third. Kelly Martinez blooped a single to center, and Video Etc. jumped back into the lead. Then, a fielder's choice by Dan Paul scored Jake Fowler, and the lead was back to 2 runs, 6-4. Through the next 3 innings, the Lawmen were held scoreless, thanks to excellent defense, Paul Hagen, and 2 fine plays by Dave Paul. And this play by Barbara Stickney. In the bottom of the 5th, Video Etc. would add an insurance run. Jake Fowler led off with another double. Then, an infield single by Becky LaMontagne put runners at first and third for Dan Paul. Dan's single scored Jake, making it a 7-4 Video Etc. lead. In the top of the 7th, the Lawmen would mount a rally and cut the lead to 7-5. But Video Etc. hung on to win and moved up into 4th place. Deb Noble was a new player on the Video Etc. roster and did an excellent job at first and second base. Deb also added a solid bat to the lineup and contributed a number of key hits. Amy Dolliver was also new to the roster in '96. Amy played a number of positions in the infield, mostly second base, and did a standout job. Here's a few highlights. And then there was Jake Fowler.
Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul will keep. Some pray to you to end the dark. I just want to hit one out of Fenway Park. A chest-high fastball out of Fenway Park. And amen. Please let Curtis score again. I just want to hit one out of Fenway Park. Amen.
Game 8 versus Walmart was a standout victory for Video Etc. Playing short-handed with only 9 players, Video Etc. held Walmart to a mere 3 hits and won the game 8-1. The victory moved Video Etc. into 3rd place as they set their sights on the leaders. Game 9 versus L Street was a tense nip and tuck affair. Video Etc. prevailed in extra innings 5-4 and moved into a tie for 2nd place. Game 10 versus Krieger gave Video Etc. the opportunity to grab a share of 1st place. With the score tied at 1 in the bottom of the 1st, this 2-run shot by Jake Fowler gave Video Etc. a 3-1 lead. Over the next 2 innings, Krieger would battle back and move ahead 4-3. In the bottom of the 3rd, Video Etc. would take the lead back. With 1 away, Jim Savage got it going with a single. Then, Kevin Gorin would line a shot to right field. And when the ball was mishandled by the Krieger outfield, Video Etc. had runners at 1st and 3rd for Paul Hagen. Paul's shot off the left field fence scored Jim and Kevin, giving Video Etc. a 5-4 lead. In the top of the 4th, Krieger would tie the game again at 5-5. In the bottom of the 4th, Video Etc. would grab the lead for good. It started with a leadoff single by Dan Paul. Then another by George Hay. Then Barbara Stickney would single to left to load the bases. And when Krieger threw the ball away, Dan scored. This brought up Amy Dolliver.
Yeah! All right! Good girl! Nice tag, Amy. You got the RBI.
Amy's sacrifice fly made the score 7-5. Then, as usual, the defense took over. Jim Savage, and Dan Paul. And this fine play by Amy Dolliver. In the bottom of the 5th, Video Etc. would add to the lead on this ripped double to left by Jake Fowler, making the score 8-5 Video Etc. The defense would hold Krieger scoreless over the final 3 innings to give Video Etc. its 8th victory. But more importantly, Video Etc. was now tied for 1st place. Game 11, Video Etc. versus Positive Steps. The game versus Positive Steps was a showdown for sole possession of 1st place. Video Etc. came out gunning in the top of the 1st. Dave Paul led off with a single. Then Kevin Gorin singled, putting runners at first and third. Then with one out, Paul Hagen singled up the middle, scoring Dave Paul. And when Positive Steps mishandled the ball, Kevin scored, making it a 2-0 lead. This brought up Jake Fowler. Jake's bullet down the left field line made the score 4-0, video etc. In the bottom of the first, the defense held Positive Steps scoreless. In the top of the second, video etc. would add to its lead. With 2 down, Kevin Gorin got it going with an infield single. Then, Positive Steps would botch Deb Noble's infield grounder, putting runners at second and first for Paul Hagen.
Gaffer, come on, Kevin! Good job! Well, job! Good job, Hagen!
Paul's hit upped the lead to 5 runs. Then Jake Fowler made it 7 with this RBI double. Over the first 4 innings, video etc. held Positive Steps scoreless, thanks to plays like these. Dave Paul. And this fine play by Deb Noble. Over the final 3 innings, video etc. continued its relentless offensive pressure. Barbara Stickney. Deb Noble. Jim Savage. Dan Paul. And Kevin Gorin, who had a 4-for-4 game. By the bottom of the 7th, video etc. had a 9-5 lead, and as Barbara Stickney squeezed the final out, video etc. was alone in first place. The catching duties were handled primarily by Beth Hawthorne and Becky LaMontagne. Beth was another new player on the 96 roster and was a welcome addition. Beth's enthusiasm and solid play were great assets in video etc.'s climb to the top. Becky LaMontagne rejoined the roster in '96 after a 1-year absence and was also a major contributor to the team's success. Becky chipped in with a number of good defensive plays and several key hits that were big factors in video etc.'s winning season. Jim Savage was the unsung hero of the 96 team. Jim turned up everywhere from first and second base to shortstop and the outfield. Jim also had an excellent year at the plate. Jim's hustling style would jumpstart a number of rallies over the course of the season. Game 12, Video Etc. versus Seacoast Ed. A victory in the final regular season game versus Seacoast Ed would assure Video Etc. of first place and a bye in the first round of the playoffs. With Video Etc. leading 2-1 in the bottom of the first, this single to left gave Seacoast Ed a 3-2 lead, but a heads-up play by George Hay and Barbara Stickney nailed the runner on the back end for the third out. In the top of the second, Video Etc. would hit Seacoast Ed with a 4 spot. After 3 walks loaded the bases, an error on Dave Paul's grounder tied the game at 3. Then, a fielder's choice by Kevin Gorin pushed home the go-ahead run. Paul Hagen singled up the middle, scoring 2 more runs, giving Video Etc. a 6-3 lead. With the score 6-4 in the top of the fourth, Video Etc. would tack on 4 more runs. It started with a triple by Dave Paul. After 2 more walks loaded the bases, Paul Hagen's sacrifice fly scored Dave Paul, bringing up Jake Fowler.
Get out of here! Go! Get out of here! Good job, Jake! Is this a no home run league?
Jake's 3-run blast put the game out of reach and made the score 10-4 Video Etc. Then, as if on cue, the defense took over. Kevin Gorin. And 2 nifty double plays by Dave Paul. Barbara Stickney. George Hay. And this fine running catch by Paul Hagen. By the bottom of the 7th inning, Video Etc. had an 11-5 lead. And as the last batter flew out to right field, Video Etc. captured its first regular season championship. It was an impressive climb to the top. After 2 frustrating losses to Fun and the Galley Hatch, Video Etc. won 8 games in a row and climbed from the middle of the pack all the way up to first place. Video Etc. finished the season with an overall record of 10 wins and only 2 losses. It was on to the playoffs as Video Etc. awaited the winner of the first round. The Seacoast Lawmen were Video Etc.'s first opponent in the playoffs. The Lawmen were a tough opponent during the regular season, and this game would be no exception. In the top of the first, the Lawmen went down 1-2-3. In the bottom of the first, Video Etc. jumped out on top. It started with a triple by Dave Paul. Then Kevin Gorin slashed a double down the line, giving Video Etc. a 1-0 lead. Paul Hagen followed with a single, and Video Etc. had a 2-0 lead after 1 inning. In the second inning, both teams were held scoreless, thanks to some excellent defense. Paul Hagen. In the top of the third, the Lawmen fought back and tied the score. With 2 on and 2 out, this line shot to left plated the tying runs. But an excellent relay throw and a terrific job of blocking home plate by George Hay kept the score knotted at 2-2. In the bottom of the third, Video Etc. took the lead back. Dave Paul got things rolling with a double. Then Kevin Gorin smacked a grounder that eluded the Lawman shortstop. And on a daring base-running play, Dave scored the go-ahead run with a beautiful slide home. Then Paul Hagen upped the lead to 2 runs with this single to center. After a walk to Kelly Martinez, Jake Fowler made it a 3-run lead with this single through the hole. But a fine play by the Lawman defense nipped Kelly at third. An infield out by Amy Dolliver moved Jake to third base, bringing up Jim Savage. Jim's double to left made the score 6-2, Video Etc. But the Lawmen were not finished yet. In the top of the 5th, the Lawmen scored 3 more runs, making the score 6-5. Video Etc. needed some insurance, and in the bottom of the 5th, they got it. With 1 away, Jake Fowler launched this moonshot to left field to up the lead to 2 runs. But Video Etc. wasn't finished yet. With 2 out, Dan Paul reached on an infield single. Then George Hay smacked a single to left, and in another daring base-running move, Dan slid into third just ahead of the tag, bringing up Barbara Stickney. Barbara's single to center scored Dan, giving Video Etc. a more comfortable 8-5 lead. Over the final 2 innings, the Lawmen would threaten, but couldn't score, as Video Etc. would chalk up its 9th consecutive victory, moving on to the semifinals. The hot corner was patrolled by Barbara Stickney. Many hitters found themselves back on the bench, thanks to Barbara's solid fielding and fine throwing arm. Barbara also had an excellent year at the plate. Barbara delivered a number of clutch hits and could always be counted on when the game was on the line. Dan Paul played first base and wielded a hot bat from the left side. Here's a few highlights. Then there was Dave Paul.
Little David, play on your harp. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Little David, play upon the harp. Hallelujah. Whoa, little David, play upon your harp. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Little David, play upon the harp. Hallelujah, yeah. Hey, now I don't know for sure, but it gets said, and I got told. Someone said that the streets of heaven were paved with solid gold. It must make a mighty good road. Little David, play upon your harp. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Won't you play upon your harp? Hallelujah.
The most valuable player may not always be the best all-around athlete, the big home run hitter, or the slick glove man up the middle. Sometimes the most valuable player is the one whose presence in the lineup makes all the other pieces fit into place. On the '96 team, that player was George Hay. George had a terrific season. After suffering a serious shoulder separation versus the Galley Hatch, George returned to action, missing only one game. George was the team's '1 pitcher and an essential element in Video Etc's winning season. Defensively, George was a fifth infielder, helping to stifle many opposition batters. As a hitter, George was a table setter and was often the spark in many of Video Etc's offensive rallies. Above all, George is a great teammate and a winner, and one of the big reasons that Video Etc. was the 1996 COREC Softball regular season champions. Video Etc's quest for the overall league championship came to an end in the semifinals with a loss to Positive Steps. Although painful, the loss in no way diminished the fun and accomplishments of the '96 season. As winter's stillness falls over the playing fields of Hampton, thoughts of next season come to mind. But for those who played on the '96 team, it will be a season of fond memories. The 1996 Video Etc. Pirates, a team to be remembered.